Here's your wrestling news for January 22nd, 2021. And your headlines for today include: WWE legend confirms he's retired. Undertaker, I was beaten up in a match. The Deadman blasts wrestling gamers. Xavier Woods fires back. CM Punk calls controversial Hall of Famer the smartest man in wrestling. Sting's AEW wrestling debut announced. New president could cause issues for wrestlers. WWE Backstage returning on Fox. More shocking details from Vice Dark Side of the Ring. Huge WWE heel turn in the works. WWE Hall of Famer demands retirement match. AEW Dynamite match is announced. Will Tony Khan buy Impact Wrestling? Sasha Banks' Mandalorian co-star wants WWE match, and more. We are kicking off today with The Undertaker, and despite his final farewell at Survivor Series last year, there's still fans who think he could return in time for WrestleMania. This week, the Deadman himself further cemented that his in-ring career is over, as he revealed on the Joe Rogan Experience that his contract has been changed, and he's now no longer classed as an in-ring talent. He said, "I'm not a talent, I'm a legend. I only worked 2 or 3 times a year, but I was under a regular contract." The Deadman explained that, as a legend, he's not subject to WWE's mandatory 4 urine tests a year, as well as 2 blood tests. Of course, there are some under Legends contracts that still compete, such as Goldberg, but with the Phenom being so open about not being considered a talent anymore, this should put to bed any rumors of an in-ring return. Speaking of the Demon of Death Valley, The Undertaker is considered one of the toughest wrestlers of all time, with a career spanning 3 decades being testament to that. This week, though, the Deadman revealed that there are some people tougher than him, and during the Joe Rogan Experience, spoke about getting literally beaten up in his first professional wrestling match with Bruiser Brody at a WCWA event in June 1987. The story goes that Undertaker, then known as Texas Red, was calling spots to Brody in the match, which didn't sit well with the Bruiser. He said, "So as I throw Brody, I'm like, clothesline. He comes off the ropes like a bullet, like a 6'5", 300-pound bullet, and kicks me square in my f***ing jaw. I deserved it. He was giving me a lesson that I needed to learn." The future Deadman even thanked Brody for the lesson, saying that it helped him learn a basic rule of wrestling, and it goes to show that even a future Phenom was not immune from a legit beating. The Deadman had a lot to say during his time on the Joe Rogan Experience, and that included taking shots at the current roster. Speaking about the current superstars, the Deadman said that current WWE shows are, quote, soft, and spoke about the differences between the locker room now and how it was when he first broke into the business. He said, "I remember walking into my first real dressing room. Half of them had knives and guns in their bags. Shit got handled then. Now you walk in there and there's guys playing video games and making sure they look pretty." We're not sure if having guns and knives in a wrestling locker room is a great idea, and given his comments about superstars playing video games, Xavier Woods responded on Twitter. Woods, who fans will know is a huge gamer and creator of Up Up Down Down, said that he wouldn't be the person he is today without the guidance of people from the previous generation of wrestling, but added that having video games in the locker room is far healthier than having guns and knives. The irony in this is that the Deadman himself is no stranger to being in video games, and even promoted WWE 2K Battlegrounds ahead of the game's launch last year. And we'd definitely have a Nintendo Switch pointed in our face than a firearm. Over to Raw now, as Bill Goldberg will challenge for the WWE title at the Royal Rumble despite mass backlash from the fans. Though most people aren't thrilled with the idea of another Goldberg return and potential title win, one person who is a fan of the legend is CM Punk. When a fan asked Punk who his favorite wrestler of 2020 was, the former WWE champion said it was Goldberg, calling him the smartest man in the room. Though Punk was almost certainly being sarcastic, we can't fault Goldberg for making a ton of money last year with WWE, including having a Universal title reign, whilst only having a handful of brief matches. We'll have to see if WWE pulls the trigger on another part-time World Championship reign for Goldberg at the expense of Drew McIntyre, but we're sure that CM Punk will be entertained if that does happen, though probably not for the reasons WWE are hoping for. AEW news next is Sting's first match for the company has been revealed. This week, the company confirmed that the Icon will team with Darby Allin to face Brian Cage and Ricky Starks of Team Taz, and this match will take place at the Revolution pay-per-view on February 26th. Not only that, but this match will also be a street fight after Taz and Allin teased taking their feud to the streets in recent weeks. This will be Sting's first match since his loss to then WWE Champion Seth Rollins at Night of Champions, and after 5 years away and a career-ending injury, it'll be interesting to see how the Hall of Famer fares as a wrestler once again. Now, this week saw Joe Biden be sworn into office as the 46th President of the United States, and this may be bad news for some wrestlers. As part of his efforts to battle the ongoing situation, President Biden signed an executive order outlining what companies must do regarding international travel. In the order, it stated that companies and individuals are now required to comply with applicable CDC guidelines, such as periods of self-quarantine and self-isolation after entering the United States. That hasn't been the case so far, and given that AEW is flying Pac in for Dynamite, they'll now have to factor in a recommended 2-week quarantine period before they plan on using him. This will apply to any companies planning to fly wrestlers in from Europe or Japan, and this tightening of the policy is one of the first steps of the Biden-Harris administration. We'll have to see how they're able to work around this new policy, and with the suggested time for quarantines being 14 days, companies such as AEW will have to make some changes. Back to WWE now, and the canceled WWE Backstage show is back once again. The show was originally nixed due to sweeping budget cuts made by Fox, but a special episode has been confirmed that'll air the night prior to the Royal Rumble pay-per-view. Not only that, but the WWE on Fox Twitter account confirmed that Renee Paquette will be hosting the show despite her WWE departure last year, as she's still under contract with Fox Sports. Paquette will be joined by Paige and Booker T, though there's no word on whether CM Punk will be on the show at this time. A lot of fans miss WWE Backstage and want to see it return, and whilst that hasn't happened yet, fans can get their fix of the show on January 30th at 8 p.m. Eastern. Speaking of popular shows, Vice's Dark Side of the Ring is preparing for its 3rd season, and now we have an update on what topics will be discussed. We've already covered that the season will open with a Brian Pillman episode that'll feature Stone Cold Steve Austin, as well as an episode focused on the Smith wrestling family. Now, PW Insider's Mike Johnson has confirmed that there will be an episode on Chris Kanyon, the former WCW and WWF star who had an 18-year wrestling career before taking his own life in 2010. There'll also be an episode on the Dynamite Kid Tom Billington, as well as Nick Gage, a legend of the deathmatch. The WCW New Japan crossover event in North Korea will also receive an episode, as well as the LA promotion XPW, as well as Japan's FMW. There's no shortage of dark stories from wrestling's past, and the 3rd season will premiere later this year. Over to NXT, and this week's show saw the Women's Dusty Rhodes Classic get underway, and it may have also seen the start of a huge heel turn. On the show, Kacy Catanzaro and Kaden Carter got the win over Mercedes Martinez and Toni Storm, and on Wrestling Observer Live, Brian Alvarez noted that a WWE source told him that this upset win is supposed to be the start of a heel turn for Carter and Catanzaro. Alvarez also pointed out that plans could always change, and also noted that Catanzaro is so likable as a babyface that a heel turn wouldn't be a good fit for her, at least not right now. With that in mind, NXT has a history of turning its beloved babyface women heel, from Candice LeRae to Dakota Kai, and time will tell whether Catanzaro and Carter embrace their darker sides in the coming weeks and months. Speaking of the WWE's women's division, one of the earlier pioneers of the division was Alundra Blaze, who isn't quite finished in WWE just yet. When the WWE's official Twitter asked fans who they'd love to see show up at the Royal Rumble, Blaze replied with a question of her own, asking when WWE is going to give her a retirement match. The former Medusa confirmed that she'd be done after having one last match, but whether this dream comes true for the former women's and 24/7 champion remains to be seen. More from AEW next, as 2 matches have been confirmed for next week's edition of Dynamite. After this week's show saw Chris Jericho and MJF be crowned the official tag team of the Inner Circle, the two will have a chance to prove themselves next week when they face the Varsity Blondes. Britt Baker vs. Shanna has also been added to next week's card, which will presumably be main evented by the Good Brothers and Young Bucks vs. Dark Order match that has already been announced. Eddie Kingston will face Lance Archer as well, and with Cody Rhodes finally ready to answer Shaquille O'Neal, there will be plenty to tune in for on next Wednesday's broadcast. Tony Khan has certainly made himself popular in wrestling circles with how he's run AEW so far, and there's been speculation about whether he wants to add Impact Wrestling to his brand full-time. During this week's Dynamite post-show, Tony Schiavone fielded several questions, including one that asked whether Khan would be interested in purchasing Impact from their current owners, Anthem Wrestling Exhibitions. Responding to whether he wants to buy Impact, Khan kept his reply short and sweet. He said, "No." Though Khan is currently working with Impact as part of the ongoing Invasion angle, and has even appeared on Impact programming in the past, that's as far as his interest in the brand goes at this time. Back to WWE now, and the company has confirmed that the Superstar Spectacle will be viewable around the world. The show, a 2-hour special TV event for India, will air at 8 p.m. local time on Sony 10.1, Sony 10.3, and Sony Max, and will also air on the WWE Network at 9:30 a.m. Eastern. The Superstar Spectacle is being taped today from the Thunderdome and will have commentary done in both English and Hindi. There's no word on what matches will take place at the Superstar Spectacle, but names including Drew McIntyre, Rey Mysterio, Jinder Mahal, AJ Styles, and a reunited New Day have been confirmed for the broadcast. And we're ending today in a galaxy far, far away, as Sasha Banks made a big impression during Season 2 of Star Wars The Mandalorian, and now another crossover could be in the works. That's if actress Katie Sackhoff gets her way, as the actress who plays the popular Bo-Katan in the series recently spoke about wanting to compete in a WWE match with the Boss. Speaking to the Sith Council podcast, Sackhoff said she hopes to be in a tag team match alongside Banks, and Banks responded with a tweet saying she loves Sackhoff and can't wait to work with her more. It was only a few years ago that Arrow star Stephen Amell teamed with Neville at SummerSlam 2015, and whilst it's unclear if either Sackhoff or Banks will return for The Mandalorian Season 3, we may soon see the pair reunite in a WWE ring.